We have the privilege of living in a democratic society founded on the rule of law and characterised by freedoms such as the freedom of association and of speech. These freedoms are precious and should be protected. So the action called for by this motion to ban Hizb Ut Tahrir is not a step which should be taken lightly. The exchange of ideas is important and hopefully leads to a productive and unifying dialogue. But dialogue requires two willing partners, each listening and responding to the other. If one partner will not engage and prefers the path of shouting and terror, then productive dialogue becomes impossible. And while freedom of speech is an important right, it comes with the consequent responsibility to be exercised well. As the British Minister for Security, Tom Tugendhat, said when prescribing Hizb Ut Tahrir, free speech includes neither the promotion of terrorism nor the celebration of terrorist acts. It is not acceptable to describe Hamas as the heroes of Palestine or the events of the 7th of October as a long-awaited victory which will help establish the caliphate. It is not acceptable to refer to the killing of Jewish tourists by an Egyptian police officer as a simple example of what should be done toward the Jews. And it is not acceptable that Hizb Ut Tahrir was able to act as one of the organisers of the encampment at the University of Sydney, and that the university did not feel that it needed to challenge or prescribe its right to organise on campus and recruit from amongst its students. The concept of a university in many ways owes its origin to 5th century Athens, and the way in which first Socrates and then Plato and Aristotle used the dialogue as a teaching tool. Students engaging together and finding the truth through what came to be called the Socratic method. At its core, asking and answering questions in a well-mannered argument where ideas could be tested, compared and knowledge found. This dialectic approach has been a great strength of the Western intellectual tradition and of the university, but to work requires that universities are safe spaces for all, where students from all backgrounds, with all points of view, with a range of beliefs, can come together to engage and to grow intellectually. And the encampment, with Hizb Ut Tahrir as part of the organising force, made the University of Sydney anything but a safe space for a number of students, including many women and Jews, and threatened the ability of the university to continue functioning as a space for the respectful exchange of ideas. Because, as Tom Tugendhat has also said, Hizb Ut Tahrir has anti-Semitism at its very core. It rejects democracy and engages in vile homophobia. As an organisation, it does not just reject British values, it seeks to undermine them. We will not let groups such as Hizb Ut Tahrir abuse our freedoms. So why did the University of Sydney allow Hizb Ut Tahrir to abuse the traditional freedoms of the university, to create a climate of fear where Jewish students felt unwelcome and unsafe on campus? The provost, in Estimate's testimony, seemed to suggest it was because student complaints were about protest, and protests needed to be protected at the university. Yet, if a student wanted to protest about the consent module required of all students, they would simply be told it was compulsory and required before a pass could be awarded. If they wanted to protest about equal treatment for LGBTIQA+ students, they would be told that this breached university policies and was unacceptable. So why was the University of Sydney unable, of its own volition, to see that the protests orchestrated by Hizb Ut Tahrir, which called, in the words of Al-Aqsa Buyan, a regular presence at the encampment, for these protests to continue, quote, until Israel is completely wiped off the map? Why was this also not unacceptable? The University of Sydney has told us, through its Vice-Chancellor, that it is unable to exercise thought leadership with respect to Hizb Ut Tahrir and requires our guidance in this regard. The traditional strength of the dialectic at this place of higher learning appears to have failed. This is to be deeply regretted, but the vacuum created must be filled by this House supporting this motion. To quote Tugendhat again, "We will never tolerate the promotion or encouragement of terrorism. We have zero tolerance for anti-Semitism. Hizb Ut Tahrir must be proscribed."